So the Trump administration released its new national defense strategy and said South Korea is capable of taking primary responsibility for deterring North Korea, suggesting a possible shift in its policy toward Pyongyang and raising concerns here in South Korea. For more on this, we're joined today by Professor Min Jeong-hun, professor at Korean National Diplomatic Academy. Professor Min, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
So this new defense strategy suggests South Korea will take more responsibility, as the United States prioritizes defending its homeland. What's your take on this?
Yes, the National Defense Strategy, NDS, of the second Trump government prioritizes the safeguarding core U.S. interests, like protecting the homeland security and expanding influence in the Western Hemisphere or American continent, and tracking the rise of China and promoting stability and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific. And to that end, the Trump government wants U.S. allies and partners to play more active roles in addressing regional security threats. So for South Korea, Washington expects Seoul to cope with North Korea's conventional military threats, and U.S. will provide critical but more limited support against North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. So the South Korean government, I think, needed to enhance its military capabilities and develop the ROK-US alliance into a more balanced and future-oriented strategic alliance. And I think that the South Korean military has got sufficient military capabilities to effectively cope with North Korea's conventional military threats. So it's about time for the two countries, South Korea and U.S., to deliver how they would maintain the airtight security on the Korean Peninsula based on South Korea's expanded roles and contributions. So I think the shifting strategic interests of the United States provide South Korea with their significant momentum to make progress for securing its self-defense capabilities and play a more active role in the security and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific.
I see. And this Pentagon document also makes no mention of denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula. What does this suggest about the Trump administration's North Korea policy in 2026?
Well, again, the NDS made it clear that North Korea poses a direct military threat to South Korea and Japan, although many of North Korea's large conventional forces are old or poorly managed. And South Korea must stay vigilant about the threat of North Korean invasion. And in addition, North Korea's nuclear forces impose a threat to the United States, and they are growing in size and sophistication. Meanwhile, as you mentioned, the document did not include the denuclearization of North Korea or the Korean Peninsula. So I think that the Trump government will be open to pursue a small deal or arms control negotiation with North Korea in order to practically control North Korea's nuclear and missile capabilities, rather than insist a big deal that it pursued or failed to reach an agreement in the past. And it is known that President Trump is the only person who can make a decision about what U.S. will do to improve the relationship with North Korea. And considering that President Trump want to meet Kim Jong-un again, so it is likely that the Trump government's North Korea policy this year will be focused on an active engagement through its efforts to revitalize summit diplomacy between the two leaders. So it is expected that U.S. will be more active to reach out to North Korea, and President Trump's visit to Beijing this April can be a turning point for the dialogue between Washington and Pyongyang.
Right. And meanwhile, South Korea's prime minister was in the United States over the weekend, and he met with Vice President JD Vance and proposed the idea of the United States sending a special envoy to North Korea as a way to improve relations between Washington and Pyongyang. Do you think this could be an effective measure?
Yes, personally, I think that sending a special envoy to Pyongyang with President Trump's letter to Chairman Kim Jong-un could be a good way to resume the communication between the two countries. It is known that Vice President Vance asked the Prime Minister Kim what would be a good approach for the U.S. to take in order to improve relations with North Korea. And Prime Minister Kim answered that only President Trump has the will and ability to improve the relationship with North Korea. And sending a special envoy to Pyongyang, whether it could be Vice President Vance or someone else, could be one way of expressing a willingness to improve the relationship. And taking into account that the inter-Korean relations are unfortunately at the bottom, so revitalizing the summit diplomacy between President Trump and Chairman Kim is the only possible way currently of bringing North Korea back to the negotiating table. So attention has increasingly turned to the leadership role of President Trump. And as you know, again, President Trump already met Kim Jong-un 3 times and continues to send a love call to Pyongyang since returning to the White House. So I think South Korea is working closely with Washington to create conditions that could encourage Pyongyang to come back to the dialogue. So, and then again, the President Trump will visit to Beijing this April. So there is a growing expectation that President Trump will meet Kim Jong-un at the Panmunjom by the time.
I see. And another issue that came up during his talks with Vance was investigation into the recent data breach at Coupang. And Kim said the Korean government did not take discriminatory action against Coupang. Do you think the government is succeeding in reassuring Washington that the Coupang dispute will not escalate into a diplomatic issue?
Yes, I think so. It is known that when talking to the Prime Minister Kim, the Vice President Vance fully understood the circumstances facing Coupang under the Korean system. The Prime Minister Kim mentioned that there had been a delay of over 50 months in reporting the leak of information to a huge number of Korean customers, and the groundless accusations had recently been made at the President Lee Jae-myung and the Prime Minister Kim Min-seok. And here, the Prime Minister Kim made it clear that there was no discrimination against American companies regarding the Coupang dispute, and the Vice President Vance expressed his understanding about the situation. And Prime Minister Kim also mentioned that the Coupang dispute will be managed in a controlled manner in order to avoid misunderstandings and overheating between the two governments. And he also assured that the Korean government would share the information about the case with the U.S. counterparts. So I think the Coupang dispute will not escalate into a diplomatic issue because the two governments have a clear understanding about the case through close communications. And as Prime Minister Kim mentioned, since the Lee Jae-myung government took office, the relationship between South Korea and U.S. has become stronger, and it is not easily swayed by just the business lobbying. But meanwhile, I needed to point out that what the Coupang investors did against the Korean government is likely to make the Korean customers' perception on the Coupang get much worse, and it will negatively affect maintaining its business in South Korea.
Right, I see. I guess we'll have to see how that goes. All right, Professor Min, thank you so much for your time and insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.